Do you think that this is the last hurrah of the Biden administration trying to get credit for months of work on the ceasefire? Or is this Netanyahu being leaned on by the Trump team and realising this is a good deal for me to make?
Well, I think, first of all, you have to say, whenever there's a transition in the most powerful country in the world, of course, it sends ripples throughout the globe, and so I think you have to, first of all, accept that always when there's a transition to a new administration, there's a new cast of characters, and every country in the world's probably most important relationship that they have with any country is with the United States. And so they start to adjust and think about it. Second, there's always a rush, isn't there, to kind of conclude things that are almost done. I remember under the Clinton presidency, there was a sort of mad rush to try and get a Middle East peace process concluded before the transition to George W. Bush, which ultimately that they were unable to do. So there's often a kind of rush to get things done. But I think what makes this sort of different is that there's also usually a lot of continuity between administrations, Democrat and Republican, on foreign affairs in practice, even if they usually come to office, whoever they are, saying, I'm not going to be the world's policeman, unlike the last guy, and then end up being that. But here, I mean, there is quite a difference of approach between the Biden and the Trump administration on many issues, particularly on the economic ones, which we're going to come on to, like tariffs. But I think in the case of this, I don't think it's obvious that Netanyahu or indeed Hezbollah would sort of want to conclude a deal because they're under pressure from Trump to yet. It might be more like we just, once Trump comes in, this is going to be prolonged. And so let's settle now and give ourselves some certainty. And I think fundamentally Israel believes it's achieved a lot of what it wants to achieve against Hezbollah in terms of degrading or almost eliminating its leadership, and certainly its ability to communicate within that leadership, because it's literally blown up their communication devices. And so, it must be a decision from the Israelis. We've basically got what we want. Let's kind of quit while we're ahead.
Here's a slightly counter argument to that. This ceasefire negotiation has been going on for months. The thing which has changed is that Donald Trump is in the White House, or about to be. And Netanyahu then thinks, okay, time to strike the deal. He wasn't giving this deal to Biden before. Joe Biden gets some of the credit for it now. But isn't the reality, if you think back to what we were saying a couple of weeks, what has Trump said to Netanyahu on the phone in the last couple of weeks? He said to him, this is I posit, I don't want big destabilizing wars in the Middle East which disrupt the global economy and make my life difficult. Your incursions into Lebanon have got to stop. Don't want you picking a fight with Iran. Whether or not we're going to see, as The Economist was suggesting this week, a rapprochement between Trump and Iran, a Nixon to China moment from Trump. That is a harder thing to pull off. But you could see Trump thinking to himself, do I really want Israel and Iran to be upping the tensions? But within Israeli territory, or in Israel, the West Bank and Gaza, the indications from the Trump side over recent weeks and months have been that they're much less bothered about what goes on in the West Bank or in Gaza than the Biden administration. And the implicit deal to Netanyahu is, if you stop making my life difficult outside kind of wider Israel-Palestine borders, what goes on inside, we're going to be much less bothered. And Netanyahu thinks, fine, that's what I want.
Yes, but because he's achieved his objectives, I think largely in southern Lebanon, at considerable cost, it should be said, to the local population. I think the situation fundamentally, though, here, it feels like the Biden administration and the Trump administration largely want to achieve the same thing, which is de-escalate. Once they're assured that Israel is not safe, is too strong a word, but is in a safer position from its external enemies. And I think the only sort of real change of emphasis is, I suspect Trump will try and play Saudi Arabia in much more than the Biden administration has. And remember, last time his very first state visit was not to Canada, which is apparently the tradition. Normally for a new American president, the first visit you do is to Canada. I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon for reasons we're going to come on and discuss. But his first visit last time was to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, was not much impressed with the Biden administration, and they are obviously a key kind of player in the Middle East that needs to step forward if there's going to be a more kind of lasting peace there. I think on Ukraine, though, if we turn to Ukraine, there's obviously a clear difference here, and I guess the question I'll pose to you is, how credible is it for the Biden administration, its European partners, including the UK, to think that it can, quotes, Trump-proof Ukraine? That it, because Trump says, I'm going to end the war in Ukraine, what Biden is doing is authorizing the use of these long-range missiles. Britain has just done the same with our version, Storm Shadow. The French have done the same. Various European countries are talking about upping the aid, the money that was voted by the Congress under the Biden administration. The Biden team are trying to get out the door as quickly as possible to Ukraine. Is it really credible to think you can give Ukraine all the means of support to withstand Trump's determination, at least the way he puts it, to broker a rapid peace?
See, I think this is really interesting, and again, it raises the question: is this disjuncture? Is this two administrations, two strategies, or is there actually more tacit cooperation going on here? I mean, it could be that Joe Biden thinks, while I can, I'll act. He may be being urged by other European NATO allies to degrade Russian capability while he can. I was at an event, though, a week or so ago with a very senior former Biden foreign policy guy, knows that world very well, who said there is no way post an election an American president would, an outgoing American president would be taking this kind of overt aggressive action without having discussed it with the president-elect. And we heard Mike Waltz talking about the discussions he'd had with Jake Sullivan about the Middle East. And if you are Trump the deal maker, and you said on day one you want this war to end, and on day one you need both sides who are willing to sue for peace, and you have leverage over the Ukrainians because of the flow of resource and military support, what is your leverage over the Russians? If in the previous weeks there has been quite a lot of Biden-led pressure on the Russians, maybe Trump thinks this doesn't do me any harm.